A pleasant good night. Toronto, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Elaine Robinson, CEO of Ghetto Stories, to Jackievibesradio broadcast facilities. I'm KoolBreeze, Curtis Anthony. Welcome, thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. We're going to talk about your evolution, your vision, mission of your craft. The KoolBreeze is here to chronicle the vibe and magnify your brilliance. An honor to have you on my show.
It's an honor to be here, Mr.
Yes.
KoolBreeze.
Yes, thank you.
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you, my dear. Yes, before we get into insights and analysis of what your community involvement is all about, welcome and how are you? How is life?
Oh, life is blessed. I'm feeling quite blessed. Happy to be here.
Amen. Yeah. Amen to that.
Yes, happy to be here.
Yes. Take a few minutes, if you would, to talk about your childhood and where you grew up.
Oh my goodness. Well, I migrated from Jamaica. I arrived in Canada. Or Canada, as you would say. 1975, I came here at the age of 10.
Wow.
I grew up in the College and Dufferin area. And then from there over to Jane and Western Road area, and then Scarborough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. What's a normal day for you like outside of working?
Outside of working, a normal day is just get up, say my gratitude prayers, and I just relax. If I don't have to do much, I just relax. I'm a YouTuber. I like to investigate all these influencers that are on YouTube. So that's my thing. I watch as many of them as I can get in, as I'm building that platform, learning how to tell the stories, so I think I've watched every show that Oprah has ever done. Wow. Just homework purposes, right? So okay. I'm watching, I'm learning. That's what I do on my off time.
Okay. No, it's incredible. What would you say is the one thing other than that accounts for your success? Talent, charm, luck?
I think a combination of all three, but talented in the sense of I've learned how to turn nothing into something. Nice. So that's my talent. I was always that person where when everybody saw adversity, I saw light. So
heavy. Yes. It's unbelievable. It's the acronym Ghetto, Ghetto. What's it stand for and how did you derive that term?
Oh my God, that's an awesome story. So the word ghetto, getting higher education to teach others, that's the acronym. Derived from in 1992, we had taken a group of young people to Atlanta, Georgia. Right. And it was a group of young people from different parts of the city, known as the Ghetto. Right. So when we went to Atlanta, we did quite a few visits to different places. So we did Martin Luther King birth home, Ebenezer Baptist Church. There's a lot to do with Martin Luther King, a lot of civil rights, and then we saw some up and coming, I'd call them community activists. So there was a community hub that we went to, and they were like hosting us, and talking about our trip and everything. And I remember when a lady says, "You guys are from Toronto?" I said, "Yes, we're from Toronto." She's like, "Oh, I heard you all are from the Ghetto in Toronto." And she had this sweet accent. And then she says, "You know what Ghetto means? It means getting a higher education to teach others." Wow. And that never left me. And then the fact that I grew up in several of the Toronto housing communities, always known as the Ghetto. Right. Everywhere I went, even before I understood what it was always negative. There was nothing positive. People would say things like, them dirty people. And I was a curious kid. What makes them dirty? Right. Like, you know what I mean? Because every time I saw places that had to do with housing, one of my first housing projects that I was privileged to be in, was Chutui.
Right.
They say Chutui, we say Chuchui. Right. So when I was over there, I saw it was a vibes.
Right.
People were outside playing, the basketball court was outside. People was just liming and having a good time.
Right.
So I was always wondering why whenever anybody talked about them, they always talked about them in such a negative light.
Okay. Yeah, because we always have these negative connotation that all they do is violence and crimes and drugs and all that kind of nonsense. That's all you
hear.
You never hear the positive stuff.
Nothing positive.
When you look at the historical aspect of African Canadians and African Americans and the Caribbean and Africa, great things come out of the ghetto.
Yes.
Some of the greatest of everything came out of the ghetto.
Yes.
And they started with nothing.
Yes. That's one of my philosophy. Start with nothing and turn nothing into something.
Wow. What do you want to volunteer? Why do you want to volunteer for an organization?
Why do I? Because I think it's important that I got my first real job volunteering.
Nice.
Because I think you get an understanding, depending on the organization, you get an understanding as to what they're all about.
Right.
And you also get some hands-on to see, is this what I really want to do? And also with the understanding that if they ever decide to hire, they're going to hire the volunteer that's been putting in the time.
Okay.
You already know. They don't have to go look anywhere else.
Right.
I'm there.
Right.
So that's why I love to volunteer.
What motivates you?
I am motivated by overcoming odds.
Okay.
I'm motivated when I've seen, once again, and I'll say it without sounding repetitive, people turn nothing into something. I'm excited when I see you say that it can't be done, and like Nelson Mandela says, it always seems impossible until it's done.
Right.
So I look for possibilities in everything.
Right. How would you define a community?
I think community found me. When the first housing project that we lived in was Cataraqui. And we live right next door to a community center. And I would always see activities going on at the center. And I never saw anybody that looked like me inside the center. So I remember when I saw the gentleman, Mr. Benobarg, that he operated the center. And I told him, I said, I don't see anybody that looks like me inside the center. So I want to come in here. What are you guys doing here? Because I saw center and I saw lots of people, and I associated that with community before I even understood what community was all about.
Okay, nice. What type of communities do you participate in?
I love, and it's a bias, and I own it. I love housing communities because I see people that look like me. I see people that I hear the stories of people who are looking to overcome. So when I go in those places, it's a brother and a sisterhood.
Right.
So I see people that look like me. We can have conversations, and it's not a hard sell.
Right.
So when I go inside, I know what I'm going there for.
Right.
I'm going to connect. And at the end of the day, we're building. That's what it is.
Terrific.
Yes.
Yes. What do you think makes a strong community?
A strong community is when we are all on the same page with the same vision. We want to see better for the community. That's that's the agenda. And we're all on the same page. That for me makes a community. When we can get the elders and the young people and everybody just together, that's a community for me.
Terrific. What are some of the methods you use to successfully boost engagement within your community?
For me, especially, so I go after the young people. Because I think they're the voice. The people that we refer to as elders, as to which I can say that I'm one now. They have wisdom.
Right.
So we connect the two. So the young people, they're looking for people to listen to them.
Right.
They're wanting their voices to be heard.
Right.
So I go in them and say, so what do you want? Tell us what you want.
Okay.
And I become that voice that brings back their information, and then together we make decisions.
Right.
I won't come in to bring something to you that you don't want.
Nice. How do you handle stress and pressure?
Stress and pressure for me is I have conversations with my notepad and my pen. I burn a lot of sage. I just find quiet spaces. I'm meditating. So I'm learning the art of meditating, but I combat stress by mindfulness. I know what stresses me, so I purposely won't go in a space. If I know it's a thing that stresses me, I stay away from it. That's how I manage mine.
Nice. Fantastic. Wow. What is one of the most successful results on growing a brand?
So as I'm learning what a brand is, I think success for a brand is people understanding your brand and wearing your brand and willing to big up your brand.
Right.
That's when you are successful. Like Walmart. Walmart is everywhere you walk in. You don't have to convince somebody to go to Walmart.
Right.
So I think that's where success comes in, is when somebody for your brand, and they wear your brand and they're bigging up your brand and they're telling other people about your brand. That's when success comes. And if you're doing something positive with your brand, even better.
Right. How do you measure success regarding community engagement?
I think I measure success by when I see results of the young people that have stepped forth and say, we want to do this. So when I see them and we've had a success in a program that they've been a part of, that for me says success. That says that they trusted you enough to give them some instructions. They trusted you enough to believe in whatever it is that they want to do, and we've given them the resources.
Remarkable. What are some of the most important skills for a community worker to have?
The most important skill for a community worker is a vision. Just believe. You just have to just believe that it's possible. And also it's not about you. So the skill is removing of self. So when you go in, don't think you're going in with the I'm your hero and I'm your shero type. Remove yourself from all of it and just step in to say that I'm looking forward to building. That's it.
Remarkable. Are you comfortable working with people from all walks of life?
Definitely. Community for me doesn't have color. There's no my movement, Ghetto Stories, because when we associate ghetto, we're looking for black people. Right? And this is what I've learned throughout the years.
Okay.
But community has nothing to do with color.
Right.
Community is people. My movement is humanness movement. From you have a story. It's not only black people that are in the ghetto.
That's right. That's right.
It's all cultures, all colors are in the ghetto. So that's what I want. I want for you to be able to connect it with a humanness movement. That's what it's about.
That's quite the illuminating explanation.
Yes.
I like that. If you had a chance to choose one area of a community to focus on, what would it be?
I think one area, as in parts of the city, I'm working on that because it's kind of hard.
Okay.
There's too much. To just focusing on one.
Right.
That's very difficult. But for what I would like to bring to them is resources.
Right.
So I love to go in places. I love communities where people have kind of written them off.
Right.
right?
There's no hope.
There's no
despair.
hope. You know, they call them, you know, they're at risk. We're marginalized. We're disenfranchised. We're racialized. And now we're BIPOC. So a community that speaks to these things and these names, and those are the areas that I would like to focus on, because I would go in and say these are just labels, and just like how they put a label on a can,
right?
Whatever label they've given you,
concept.
we can take that off.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Good. Elaine, I've seen you at the Caribbean Farmers Market. You bring a dynamic cosmic energy and synergy to the community, which is extraordinary. This is what we need. How do you do it?
I do it because I believe in it. You cannot give a good energy to something that you don't believe in.
Amen.
Right? So if you're walking around and, you know, for me, the farmers market represented a community. It represented culture, right? And culture is not about you and I. Culture doesn't have color.
Right.
It's about everybody coming together and sharing, because every community, we have a somewhat of a culture that we have. So how we experience and embrace is other people's culture.
Right.
When we go on Danforth for Greek festival, we're going on there to see a community, but we're also, that's culture, that's food, that's engagement, you're meeting people. That's what it's about.
Splendid. Elaine, you bring stories from the diaspora normally that won't get heard.
Yes.
And thanks to people like us, Radio Region,
Yes.
Jackievibesradio,
Yes.
we are bringing these stories to life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
You and I
Yes.
worked together at Radio Region broadcast facilities for a period of time. And we've never met because of time zone.
Yes.
And we had great fun conveying messages local to global.
Yes.
Amazing personalities down there. I like to think that my effervescence had rubbed off on a few broadcasters over my 4-year tenure.
Yes. Oh yes. Oh yes.
It was a great place because it was an ecosystem.
Yes.
Because of the cultural diversity there at Radio Region and men.
That word. And when we say diversity, I say it in the context of diversity is not an exotic fruit.
Right.
Diversity is something that we have to embrace and be able to say, this is what we're about. So we understand the diversity and we're sharing it in the community, right? So it doesn't have a color.
Right.
It just have an energy.
Yeah.
An energy. Yes.
Delightful.
Yes.
Elaine, you entertained with eloquence, grace and humor, and you were the MC at the Rastafest. Splendid job. How did you acquire these skills?
Oh, I'm love sharing my voice.
Okay.
But a few years back, I'd always said it, and I make people laugh when I say it. When I arrived at Toastmasters, because I'm a Les Brown fanatic, and Les Brown always said, get into a Toastmaster, get into a Toastmaster. Like, what the heck is a Toastmaster? So I looked it up online, I found a Toastmaster class, and I went, and I said, oh, I understand. So it's about speaking and teaching you how to speak and how to articulate yourself. And I told them, I said, I can make black people laugh, but I could not make white people laugh. So, you know, please teach me how to do these things. And they all started laughing but for me, Toastmaster was about training. It was about learning how to articulate yourself to share the stories. And there was a structure that went about how to share the stories. So I got excited with that, just excited me. And then the fact that one of my, you know, heroes, Les Brown, this was what he said, you know, learn to speak, then you can elevate yourself and you can elevate others with your story.
Fascinating. Sometimes in a community-based organization, you tend to find division, jealousy, resentment. How does that enhance or enlighten your perspective?
I understand my assignment.
Okay.
I understand my assignment. My assignment is, if you give me a community and you say, this is what you'd like to get done.
Right.
That's what I do.
Right.
I stay away from all of the political nonsense that they have inside. I've worked in several. Right. In my 40 years of community work, I have worked in several communities, several organizations, from not-for-profit to the city. And that's one thing that I stay away from. I stay away from I understand it, and I do know how to work my way around it to get results.
Right.
So, because you need the stakeholders, you need them at the table. The politicians, they're the one that's running the communities, so we need to have conversations. Those are the pieces that I know. And I know that they work with the right conversations. But the other pieces, I stay clear of.
Wow, that's good. That's wisdom. We want to improve our outreach efforts to reach more people in the community. Provide an idea that you would implement if hired.
For me, it's about it has to be personal.
Okay.
Very personable for me.
Right.
So we're now in an era of technology where things are not as personal. Right? Everybody thinks if they send you a Facebook link, you're going to be there. Or it's on Instagram, it's going to be. So what if I'm not on Facebook or Instagram? Right? So how do you connect with me?
Right.
So I'm personable. I like to knock at your door. Right? Invite you into a place where we can sit down and have authentic conversations. For me, that's what it's all about, because it's about being able to connect with someone authentically in a space where we can look each other in the eye and knock at your door that says, I respect you enough to come to your space, to engage with you.
Nice. How do you update your community?
I have different communities, so I'm in different areas. So I have a lot of young people that like me. So I sit with quite a few of them, and I'm just like, teach me this. So I have that group of young people teaching me all of the new technology.
That's
right. That's because that's all this is, right? A lot of it is about technology. So I have a group that teach me about technology, and my other group of people that I spend quality time with, and we've known each other since 1975. So we have a little spot where we all just go and chill. Some play dominoes, hold a drink, just have a conversation to just kind of catch up with each other. How are you?
Great. You once told me about, you explained community to me and you broke it down. I was really touched by that. The last 5 words in community. Tell us about it.
Unity. Right? We hear the word community. Right? The last letter says unity. So if the community is not unified, we can't get much done. It's about unity. We have to not be closed-minded to the things that we don't know.
Right.
And the people that don't necessarily, your community is not necessarily someone that looks like you.
Right. True.
Right? And that's something that we have to understand, because we have community, and then we have sub-community, and then we have sub-communities, right? So you have to understand where you fit in that.
Okay. As a community worker, how do you balance your work and personal life?
When I'm at work in the community, I'm at work in the community. When I'm home with my family, it's home with my family. There was a time in my life where both worlds collided because of the love I had for community and the idea that I had in my head that I could do both. And I was in this, I'm going to rescue the world behavior, realizing that it didn't mix. Because when I lived in certain communities, I lived in Chester-Lee for over 20 odd years. I never had a key to my house. And my door was always open. And it was that, and I remember my partner would say to me at that time, boundaries. You don't have no boundaries. It's a free-for-all. And there are times when people just wanted to talk. And I came in and I was tired. But I've opened my door and I've given them this open door policy that says it was okay So I had to learn and unlearn a lot of those behaviors because it didn't serve. So I understood what boundaries were. A lot of this community service that I'm in, understanding the language enough and understanding enough to use it on myself.
Okay.
That was a piece that I needed to remove myself because I was really into it and caught up. And then, my kids were in the community and this was it. And I had this mentality that, I just want us all to be together. But there are times when it didn't work that way.
Right. What are your biggest strengths in the role of a community engagement officer?
My biggest strength is, once again, my love for community and the ability that I have to connect.
Right.
I'm the connector, and I'm not taking no for an answer. So you cuss me today, I'll be back tomorrow.
Right.
You cuss me today, I'll be back until you get to that point where we can have that conversation, and we're able to break it down to get to the understanding. What's your frustration? When I first came up, when I started to do community engagement here on Eglinton Avenue in Little Jamaica, and the first person I spoke to, we are now good friends, but he gave me a really hard time, and he pushed my button in the sense that I had to go back to the table and say, now how do you reach out to this individual?
Right.
Because he was not happy with them calling this place Little Jamaica. He's like, I'm not even Jamaican. Why? And it's not only Jamaicans that's on this space. And he went hard, and then he broke it down for me bit by bit. So we were able to, now we're good friends.
Right.
And that was my challenge to say. It was more about understanding where the community is coming from,
right,
versus the message that I have or the message that I see in my head.
Wow. Elaine, as you know, generational wealth is part of money,
yes,
community, clean air,
yes,
food security,
yes,
earning a home,
yes,
a sense of belonging. And there's the B side to that, the psychological safety. Have a place safe to learn, safe to fail, a contributive safety, feel you can challenge the status quo, all a valuable part. What's your analysis?
Oh my God, that's deep.
Yeah.
That's deep. Generational wealth means different things to different people.
Right.
I think it's about legacy. It's about understanding what that really means.
Right.
And we as a community break it down, because when we hear wealth, we're thinking riches and
yes,
finances, and and that has a lot to do with it.
Right.
Because we're a community that never really had that conversation.
Right.
Like we see other cultures have generational wealth that they've left for their children. We are now learning to understand what that really means. So it's about breaking it all down,
right,
to something that you can understand, and share the pieces from your understanding. And when in doubt, reach out, because now we are having those financial conversations. Never had them. I never had a financial conversation. I knew existing and living, right, and I'm still doing both. You work and you make sure the kids are fed, you make sure you pay your rent, yes, have a little savings, but what was generational wealth? I am now understanding what all of that really means, and I understand legacy, because you have to build that, right, so I'm understanding what that means now.
Illuminating explanation.
Yes.
I like that. Last Saturday at the Caribbean Love Restaurant, you put on a fabulous event, spoken word, poetry, and live music. A wonderful evening of entertainment. How did you pull it off, Elaine? How did you do it?
I didn't do it by myself.
Okay.
The lovely Judith Shaw, aka Black Cocoa Brown. We did a show like this out in Bowmanville, as to which I was the MC, host for the evening, and it was amazing. Poets, same scenario. The concept behind it was Eglinton West was always known as a place for vibes and community. That's why the it was called Bring Back the Vibes upon Eglinton.
Right.
Because that's what when people came down here, that's what they came for.
Right.
Whether it was at Raps late 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, all of us standing up around the drum pan, eating some food, but it was about vibes.
Right.
So it was partnering with Black Cocoa Brown to bring back this energy that has been missing, especially in the last 13 years of what's been happening on Eglinton.
And this year you practically see me at every event on the Eglinton Rastafest.
Yes, you were there.
Sinting Fest.
Yes.
Durham Caribbean Carnival.
Yes.
Caribbean food tasting.
Yes.
What else they have?
One night, Honey Gurus.
Right.
One night, yes.
And the tribute they had for that gentleman who passed,
Pluggy Satchmo. Yes. So between Reggae Lane and the Green Pea parking lot, it was busy. Eglinton was busy, and it was beautiful.
Yes, I went to also a Grenadian oil dung thing in the park. That was good too. And every time you see me, I always have Betsy on my shoulder, ready to roll some tape, baby. Ready to roll some tape.
Yes.
So, our community, I mean, you and I wear this stuff on our badge of honor on our in our hearts.
Yes.
So people can't dispute that. Our cultural footprint is significant in what we've made in Toronto.
Yes. Yes.
Agreement.
It's a culture. It's about community. It's about connecting and understanding what culture really means. Because it's about coming in, embracing, and learning someone's culture.
Right.
Because until Caribana, people don't know much about Trinidad and Tobago, and then all of a sudden, and then we trace it back to the roots of where Pan came from, Nigeria. You know what I mean? So bringing all of that cultural history together and sharing it, especially for the young ones who don't know much about what all of this is all about.
Well, when you see me out there, I'm not just rolling tape for me. It was for the community.
Yes.
It's a Jackievibesradio.
Yes.
So it's all this kind of stuff. Where do you see yourself going into the future with the community involvement?
Well, with the community involvement, I'm proud to say with conviction that Ghetto Stories is an official not-for-profit. So that's one aspect of what I'll be going into the communities, looking for areas that we can I don't like the word problem solve, so we can find solutions to issues that are coming in, that are happening around globally, because it won't be just here in Toronto. We're looking for this is the ground. This is my groundation. As I'm building my foundation. So that's what we're doing. So that's what that, and I also have a social enterprise where same thing. I Am Ghetto is a social enterprise. Ghetto Stories is the not-for-profit, and it's about teaching people how to tell their stories so that people can understand where you're coming from. Marcus Garvey said it best. In order to know where you're going, you need to know where you're coming from.
Absolutely.
So if you don't know your history, you tend to repeat. So we're teaching, and also storytelling is an oral history that we've learned from we were kids. That's how we learn. So sharing the stories that there's somebody waiting to make a move, but they need to hear somebody have done it. So and so did it. So if so and so did it, that means I can do that too. When we look at the people like the Dwight Drummonds coming out of Jane and Finch, when we look at recently elected Mr. Steve Anderson, Deputy Mayor Shelburne, grew up in Jane and Finch. Like when we look at all those names, when we look at a person like the lovely Honorable Jean Augustine coming out of Grenada as a domestic who she is to who she is now.
It's incredible.
Those are things that community needs to hear, because they need to understand that it's not where you're coming from.
Where's where you're going?
It's where you're going.
And we have to embrace black excellence.
Yes.
But there's a slight correction on when we talk about the carnival and pan, because you're going to get a lot of pushback on this.
Yes.
You said the pan from Nigeria.
Yeah.
It was originated in Trinidad.
Yeah.
The Winston's Free Simon.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
anyways.
So when I say Nigeria, I'm talking about the connection of the music and the community. That's where the connection.
That's right.
That's where it is.
And a lot of in the slave trade came from Nigeria and spread all over the Caribbean.
Spread all over. Yes, that's the piece that so we need to know about that, because if you listen to Nigerian music, Ghanaian music, similarities, and when we touch into soca, you hear the similar. So that's what it's about, reflecting of and understanding our roots, grounding of where we're coming from, to share culturally.
Right. What's one of your most memorable moment in what you do creatively or performing?
Oh, my most memorable moment, my most memorable moment for me came when I saw a young lady, and she heard my voice, and she says, "You're the ghetto lady." And I started to laugh. It says, and the other lady that was sitting down there, she didn't know the context of the ghetto lady. So she says, "You know that I graduated George Brown because of you. Everything that you said, I listened to, and I graduated George Brown. And I've been waiting one day, hoping to see you, that I could tell you that." Wow. And I was in a place, and I just broke into tears, because I remember going to George Brown, and I ended up speaking in a couple of quite a few of the new students coming in. Right. And I made sure that I told them my story of how I ended up at George Brown, and how important education, as we've come to understand it, what it is, and why it's needed. And especially as someone who has had the children young, growing, me and these children are growing, we're bringing so just understanding what that meant. And I told them exactly how I did it. I said I did my homework on the train, because when I dropped the kids off at daycare to come home, and there was no time. Wow. There was no time. So once I got into the house, that was it. So after I dropped them off, I found my little spot on the train, and I traveled from Finch and Victoria Park to King. So in between that time, whatever homework that I could get done, that's how I did the homework. That's where I did the reading. That's where I did it. So when I said that to them, and I told them,
So you had the kid.
Yes.
Then you were trying to make it.
Yes.
School. How did you do all of that?
It was difficult, but I was blessed to be surrounded by community. So my mom was there with me. May her beautiful soul rest. She was there through all of it. I'm going to school. She's there. I've tried the school thing a couple times, and we always, said, "This is not for you. If it's for you, it will be for you. If it's not, it's not." So I got my high school education at 36, and I was already a grandma of, the third one came. I was a grandma of 3. When at age 41, I got my college diploma. And when I got there, and I tried George Brown College 3 times, I said this third time I wasn't leaving without. Resilience. So it had to, and I built that up in many different places on the journey of education, because when we push education, but we push it to people who don't understand. So you can't push something if you don't understand the value of something. You can't embrace it. True. So if you're telling me to go to school, tell me why. If you're telling me, that if you learn a new language, like I tell the youths now, you learn French, and that's an extra $20,000 on your paycheck. Right? So when you're saying to somebody, go to school, they're not saying, go to school, get something, and this is the result. Because you, at times, without certain, knowledge of school and schooling and papers, you don't get very far. Right? Mind you, there's a whole other world that says 90 90 somewhat percent of the richest of the richest, they don't have high school or anything like that. But that's another conversation.
I'm glad we tapped into that piece.
That's another conversation.
I'm glad you put in that piece of the story.
Yeah. But in the world that we live in, and I witnessed it from myself, acceptance with education. I saw how people treated me different when I got the education that they saw, that they value as education, because that's what they value. They didn't see my street education as education. And I told them, I say it loud and I say it proud, I'm street educated first. The institution education came later on. Right? And I used all of that knowledge to get me every job that I've ever had. I'm teaching people with letters behind their names how to engage with community, what you do in community. This is what, but they have these papers so people see them as the experts, right? So there was a challenge to break that part down, but I said I had to get this so that I could level the playing field, because that's what it's about. It was about leveling the playing field so I can show you that I can function in both worlds. But this is what you, the community, because the first thing when I would go to places to speak, even before I got a high school education, the first thing somebody would ask me when they hear me open my mouth, oh, so which university did you go to? So which college did you go to? And I would say I haven't been to one yet, and I think they'd be shocked. But I spent a lot of time reading, a lot of time in the library, just being curious. I was always curious, and I went to a lot of seminars. Every time there was a seminar, I'm like, yo, I became a seminar junkie. I was sitting front, me and the instructor right there. I was like, and every word. And then I would go back and say, oh, so this is what I need to do. Oh, so this is what, that's how I learned. Right? And that's what I shared with the community, the authenticity of being able to adjust yourself, make the adjustments when it came to learning, especially when I understood the value.
Wow. Marvelous. Wow. Listen, even my boss on work, lady boss, Nicole, she was happy when I told her I was I'm going home, get set up and do another community worker interview, and she was happy. She helped tapped into some of my resources I never had chance to open up and get out there. So I'm happy to have somebody blessed like her. Big shout out there, Nicole. And this is amazing. And I tell any of the kids out, the young people, older folk, it doesn't matter. See the documentary of the Black Godfather. Clarence Avant had nothing, came from the dirty South. Nobody ever saw him with a toolkit. He worked his way up and went up north and met people and built himself, and he was big wigs embraced the guy. Had to see what he had, street savvy. He had that ghetto fabulous, but man, they didn't mess with this. He knew his stuff, and still today, you wanted a deal done, you had to go to Clarence and get it done properly, man. Still today, well-respected man, right through America, man. I just totally blow me away. They need to see these stories. Stories
are very important, because they give you a window into the person's journey. Because when we see like Oprah Winfrey, and we see Oprah, hearing where she's coming from, and we're looking to see where she is now, we're like, it's possible. Like, that's what stories do. They just say, it's possible. I am possible. A man, Nelson Mandela, locked up for 27 years, came out to be the president of the country that imprisoned him, 27 years. That's a lifetime. Several lifetimes, right? So for that to happen, that says learn, and he talks about how, and he's such a humble and education. And what does that? So education is not only an institution. Education is knowledge of self, because you have to understand who you are and what you are, so you can put all of what you're learning into context. And Maya Angelou, but before there was a Maya, all our greats of the greats says, when you learn, you teach.
Right, that's right. Right?
So you learn something, right? You pull somebody up and take them with you.
Right.
When I got my high school at 36, everybody that I knew that didn't have, I'm like, you don't have your high school? Come. I brought them to SCAS. SCAS is Scarborough Center for Alternative Studies. That's where you go to get your high school, and it operated somewhat like a college, but just was for grown folk. Right? And it was nice to see. And when I was in that place, I was like, oh my gosh. And I got excited for learning. I felt, they say you fall in love. I fell in love. I'm still in love even more now with learning.
Amazing. That is amazing. And Malcolm X says, education is the passport to your future.
And he also said, to educate a man is to educate an individual.
Right.
But to educate a woman is to liberate a nation.
Right.
So when I heard that, I'm like, I'm part of this nation. And I ended up meeting Malcolm X's wife, Dr. Betty Shabazz, in New York at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. I ended up meeting Alex Haley, also at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. I went over for a conference back in the 90s that they had. But for me, that was also a redefining moment as to when he told the story of Roots and all the other stories that he told. He's a storyteller. We live those stories through his vision. So that's what stories do. And I always say that. You hear the story, somebody's waiting to hear my story. How'd you do it? So this is what I did. And the story changed their lives.
Right. Now, I was curious, and I forgot to ask you, how did you get the show at Radio Region, and what stories were you telling?
Oh my gosh, Radio Region. We ended up being interviewed on a show. And then after we were interviewed on the show, we were invited to say that this, and I was like, oh yes, I'm so excited. So we got a spot on Radio Region. And I say we because I was also in partner with Black Wellness. So Black Wellness was doing a 1-hour show talking about the wellness of our Black community, and then Ghetto Stories, and it was the same thing. It was I brought people in who had what is considered a ghetto story, overcoming insurmountable odds from where they're coming from.
Okay.
So that's what I did at Radio Region.
Because I used to look on the grid to see what was who was new and who was interesting and what it all, and I couldn't find out unless the IT guy had posted a little bio on them, and I'm curious, and I used to go, when I go to do my show, I used to pull down some of the archive shows, just the only way I could hear because of the time zone sometimes. So, and I said, this show looks, I've never seen a show like that.
Because when people hear the word ghetto, they automatically assume it's a world star hip hop moment. That's where they go to. So when we hear words tend to be positive or negative depending on where you are in the receiving of the word. So when we hear a word like ghetto, automatically it's negative. And everything that has to do with communities that's been seen as ghetto, it's always negative. When you hear them, from Jane and Finch, Regent Park, that's all they do. You hear all of the negative stories. You never hear the positive stories.
Dwight Drummond came out of Jane and Finch.
Jane and Finch.
It's a lot of good stuff.
Now he's sitting at CBC.
Anchorman.
Anchor. CBC. Yes.
A lot of stories. Man. And then when we met up at last year at Farmers Market, and I kind of overheard a conversation. It's Ghetto Story. Somebody was talking, and I kind of heard something. And we made conversation and said, "Are you still on radio?" And I said, she said no because of COVID and the technology, a disconnect. And I said, hey, I gotta get you on here with Jackie Vibes. Let's get something going here. Yes. Because you can't have this kind of talent and vision and let it dissolve in thin air.
I think for me, the challenge with a lot of growing and understand this business, because a lot of people were not comfortable with. I agree. And that was one of the challenges for me. So I would go into places, share the story. We were doing very good, and then politics came in. Right. We were on another internet radio station doing extremely well. We had 1,500 come on watch us in a 1 hour show. And then politics came and we were out of the space. And I said I didn't want to start something again to lose it again, but because I find that's what happened when you're not in control of the spaces, and when you're learning, because we were brand new to this, a lot of people were internet radio, and then that
came,
part
and
came
then
in,
COVID come
and then COVID just came and said
boom.
So one thing I learned from COVID is that we're not in control of anything. So whatever you thought you were in control of, this thing came in and said, I got you before you can get me. Done.
It's amazing. It is amazing. Well, I'm glad we had this time to convey our messages, local to global, and this is what it's all about. Because I tell people, when I got into radio, I wanted to bring real music back. I wanted to bring community back. Make them have a sense of involvement. Anybody can, large, medium, and small, could come and tell their stories on Jackie Vibes. And the same thing I started at Radio Region. We never look back.
Because it's about what I will say it. It's about the power of stories. It's about understanding what that really means. Because when you open up and you share the story authentically, you're waiting. You're growing people. They're waiting to hear, what can I? They're taking something from that and heal. Most recently, I was in Canada's 100 Black Women, and even the journey to get into that. So my story is in that book with 100 other Black women, and a lady messaged me, and she said, "Thank you. I read your story and thank you. I went to another event." And lady, when I was finished speaking, she came down and she started crying and all, because apparently she had her child, I think, at 14. And she was crying because she's like, I said, I had mine on my 16th birthday. So we were sharing, and the people were, and I remember when I walked in the room and, getting ready to share the story, just opening my mouth and saying certain things, I just saw the way the people started looking. So there's sharing the stories is the guilt, shame attached to, nothing positive. So when you feel ashamed about something, you don't want to share that.
Quite true.
Because the judgment that comes with that, it's like, oh, you shouldn't be talking that. Don't be talking that. Don't be talking that. Because there's a lot of people that live in our world right now with a lot of stories, but they're filled with shame, and they're filled with guilt, and regret, and so each piece just gets hit, and it hits, and it just does, and it's very, not very deep, and it hurts, and nobody's teaching them how to share those stories to overcome that hurt. Because once you own that story, you have to own the story. You can't tell the story if you don't own the story. So you gotta own the story. Then you gotta prepare yourself to heal from that story. Then be ready now to tell the new story. What does a new story look like? I get into places where people have known me. I was a rambunctious teenager, but they know piece of that story. So when I see them now and they see me now, it's like, oh, they're ready to. I said, come over to this chapter. You might like this one better. Wow.
Well, we have similar parallels in stories and coming up, but sometimes I felt like I was thrown to the wolves, but I came back leading the pack.
There you go.
Alpha male.
All the way.
Yeah.
All the way. All the way. I found that the honesty in my story, I hear a lot of people, oh, thank you. We didn't know. Thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. You changed my life just by hearing you. And those are the things for me that feels really good. Because when I go into places, I said, especially when I see, a lot of the young people, a lot of the young women and children, I said, I was that young mom. And I remember how people looked at me. I felt like alienated by them. I was not embraced by that community. So it's like when I see them, I embrace them. I give them as much power as I can give them
show them love.
And give them love. Based on my story, I'm like, listen, this is how I did this. Come, this is what I did. This is what, you know what I mean? Sometimes I had to learn also, that moment you get too close. But it's about sharing and understanding. Because once you can share it from a place, they will receive it from that place.
That's right. And I was even telling my mom one time, and then a lady on work, I said, if I had grown up really privileged or this and that, I probably would not be doing this today. So God has a way of carving you, chiseling you out to for a certain path, right?
Yes.
So
yes, I was in for this path. It found me, and I ran away from it a few times. I ran away from it, and then every time I went somewhere, I was pulled back. And I said, I had conversations, because I do have conversations, when I understood the power of God and everything, just the power of spirituality and understanding yourself. And when I had those conversations, I've given you this gift. I've given you this gift. This is your gift. This isn't anybody else's. This is yours. So take this gift and just do goodness with it. And that's all. That's it. Just do goodness with it. And I think, but for some time, for majority of people, we're given these gifts without an understanding as to what they're really about. But I think it comes from us understanding ourselves. Then we can understand our gifts and our talents, because they come one the same gift. And from your gift, and you understand it, then you can share it.
Somebody sent me a video clip of Vaughan Road Collegiate before, and it turned to Academy long after I left. Amazing story. I'm seeing it. Oh wow, we had such a rich history of Vaughan Road School. Next thing, I'm looking at the documentary, and a friend of mine, we're playing upright bass. How did they get that picture? I don't know. So I snapshot it, send it to my friends, my daughters, and then my daughters go, Popsy, I didn't know it. I said, your dad's got a story too, that a lot of it hasn't been told. So, I tell them, I just want you to keep striving for excellence. And so it's been a fascinating evening, Elaine. Anything else you want to plug in?
I just want to say to the community that's listening, it is a powerful place to be when you can use your story to uplift someone, so that they can change their lives for the better. It's a powerful place to be in order to do something like that. So when you're able to do that, you're able to share yourself with the world. And there's a world that's waiting. Somebody is waiting for that story that they can heal from something that's been they've been holding on to. So that's what I want to say to them. Learn how to go into yourself. Have conversation and release that thing that's holding you hostage, because it can do that. And just step into a better place that you're able to give nothing but goodness to the world. Incredible.
Where can fans find you on social media platforms?
They can find me at Ghetto Stories, Elaine Robinson on Facebook, Ghetto Stories on Instagram. We're rebuilding that brand. But if they want to reach out and share their story in about a month from now,
Right.
I'll be back at hosting a 1 hour show that'll be sharing individuals who are ready to share their authentic story of overcoming insurmountable odds with the community.
Okay. Any shout out to fans, friends, and family?
Oh, just big up everybody. Big up everybody for loving, just for loving and understanding what the Ghetto Story is all about. And, just for giving me love.
Right.
So, lots of big up. And, big shout out to Jackievibesradio for just taking the time to really go into community.
Yes.
And have, comfortable as well as uncomfortable conversations, because that's what it's about.
Yes. It's been such an incredible evening here in the studio. Jackievibesradio is the voice of the people in the heart of a struggle. My name is Curtis Anthony. I'm proud to be part of the revolutionary Cosmic in Toronto. People know me as the KoolBreeze, and I thank you for the correspondence. I thank you for taking the time to join Jackievibesradio broadcast facilities in Mississauga and Toronto. The main channel is in Mississauga, and the channel 3 is on Glenholm and Eglinton. And I appreciate your time. I appreciate your perspective. Come see us again. God bless you. Peace, love, and unity.
All the way. Big up yourself, Mr. KoolBreeze. You don't know.
Yes, thank you, my dear.
Yes.
Jackievibesradio, the best station in the nation, the baddest sound in town. We operate 24 hours a day on 2 channels. 15 broadcasters, 15 genres of music. We play just about every genre of music. Yes, sir. Bless yourself.